Welcome back to the Pantheon of SANDBOX! This is the fourth episode in a series of lore dump speed paints where I detail the deities that keep my OC world of SANDBOX from burning down for the nth time according to actual mythological canon. But it's going good this time, I swear! Also make sure to check out the previous episodes on my channel and the playlist annotated above. Anyway, it's the fall season coming up by the time I'm making this, and with trees beautifully dying everywhere, the sacrifice of human passion and compassion of all parties involved during Black Friday, and Halloween coming up, yay, I think it's a perfect season to talk about death. Death is an essential part of life, so a god for it is just as essential to any pantheon. But you saw the title. We're being extra today, boys. SANDBOX doesn't just have one Reaper, we doing 4 Reapers. Let's fucking go! Now I'm sure someone out there is asking, why the fuck do you have so many Reapers? The simple answer is, I genuinely could not decide who to pick, so I went with my top 4 favorites, and hey, 4 is the number of deaths in some cultures, so it works out. But I do have a legitimate lore reason. There are so many stories from mythology and others where it's evident that Death's job is hard. It's either some assholes tricking Death, or Death themselves becoming disillusioned by everything, sometimes even needing to be replaced. It makes sense in a way, having to guide every dead soul across the entire world all by yourself. Even Death's brain would get that 9 to 5 mushiness. I imagine a pantheon like SANDBOX's that is trying to keep the world in balance would want to avoid that. I would have gone with the idea of an organization or agency of Reapers, but that sort of thing is meant for an entire story focus, not just a world-building side project to my actual story. And thus we have the 4 Reapers of SANDBOX. Each covers their own specialty in guiding the dead to the afterlife. Let's go over each one, starting with Santa Muerte. I really wanted a rep for the aesthetics and ideals of Dia de los Muertos, aka Day the Dead, so the patron saint of death herself from Mexican culture was ideal. She's even a classic skeletal reaper with a scythe. Like, come on, she's perfect. Santa Muerte in SANDBOX carry over the ideals of her original culture as she specializes in reaping souls who truly deserve to be remembered. From heroes to simply wonderful people, just those who have brought a positive influence to the world and or the people in their lives. Sometimes this backfires, because sometimes folks are hard to forget for the wrong reasons, like being memorable and giving others positivity is a much broader category than you think. Really tests Muerte's patience when, for example, an egomaniac weirdo who made something so trash and inspired people to make and do better than them thinks themselves as inspiring and important as a superhero because they were reaped by the Reaper of the Remembered. It happens more than she would prefer, like the saint's got the patience of a saint, let me tell ya. But for the majority of the time, it is a fulfilling job to keep the remembered, even in death. Also, while she is a very serene type of death, she is still death, and wields her signature classic-style scythe with the expertise and power you'd expect of death. Each of the Reapers are very strong last lines of defense in case eldritch horrors get a bit too far into this reality. Santa Muerte enjoys her roles as a nice, peaceful death, but also enjoys any chance to rightfully throw hands and let off some steam, no matter how rare that it actually happens. Again, saintly patience. The hardest part of the design process was figuring out how to make her unique and not a rip-off of Book of Life, which has like the most peak Latin American death designs I've seen, so it was hard to keep that out of my mind. After a failed attempt and a lot of struggling, I was able to make a really solid and very pretty design in the end. I gave her a heart motif in her patterns to match her theme of the Remembered, they will always be with us in our hearts kind of thing. The heart-shaped sugar skull face also gives the shape of an owl's head. I really wanted to make sure she had owl elements, as that's a major part of her iconography. I also gave her an hourglass figure, both to fit the reference I had for her Mexican-style dress, and to reference the hourglass she is often depicted having. Best part of the design, though, was that it helped me establish some design details that keep this lot a bit more uniform. We'll be talking about that much later, though. Let's move to the next Reaper, Goodest Boy Anubis. I love the aesthetics and vibes of ancient Egypt, and like Mexico, it's a culture that is famous for their special treatment of their dead. So Anubis was as staple as an ash blossom. He needed to be here, and it helps I just love him anyway. You all know he's the jackal-headed god of mummification. I don't really need to elaborate on him too much. He's about as iconic and everywhere in the media as the Monkey King, arguably more so. However, for my take on the Doggo the Dead, I'm going to actually follow the original myths and depictions. I know that doesn't sound unique, but it sadly is, because of the Hades effect, which is when Westerners interpret a figure of death as evil or basically just Satan, and often make that the mainstream interpretation. I find it even more disrespectful towards Anubis because the Egyptians made it very clear that Anubis is a very, very good boy, cause dog, but we Westerners just said, yeah, that doesn't vibe with our Christian values, so he's gonna be another flavor of Satan for us. Okay, thanks, bestie, bye! So yeah, my Anubis is gonna be the type to look intimidating and emotionless on the surface, but is very much the opposite. He cares for every spirit that dies regardless of what they have done in life, and so his specialty is the scales. Anubis will put the dead soul's heart on one side of his scale and a pure feather on the other side. The heart is heavier for more negative actions done in life and lighter for more positive actions. If your heart is heavier than the feather, you're going to hell. If it's lighter, then you're going to heaven. And if it's perfectly balanced between the two, then you get to choose which afterlife you want. Essentially, Anubis' method guarantees where you'll be going, because he thinks it'd be way more comforting for a soul to know where they'll end up rather than leave things further uncertain after one's life was full of uncertainties to begin with. His judgment is always fair and neutral with a caring motivation behind doing so. If that's not a good boy, I don't know what is. His design is very straightforward for Anubis, nothing really of note beyond fusing the scales with his weird farming tool-like staff in his art to create his special judgment scythe. Despite how standard it is, he still looks great to me, and that's what matters. Alright, it's time for the less pop culturally known god of the video, the Morrigan. From Irish myth, a name meaning Great Phantom Queen. She's a shape-shifting goddess of war, fate, and death. She's an extremely important and powerful figure in Celtic folklore. Her purpose is to incite change in important events. Doesn't matter if it results in war or peace, so long as growth happens, it's worth it. Think of it like a sort of less malicious Happy Chaos from Guilty Gear Strive. I mean, there was that time she fucked up Cuchulainn because he wouldn't fuck her, but that was more of a personal thing. Speaking of Cuchulainn, that story actually inspired the Morrigan's method as a Sandboxian Reaper. The Morrigan has always had a thing for those with great strength, both in terms of physical power and social power, regardless of if they were good or evil. So when an extremely powerful person dies, they are most likely taken into the Hunt, a fog-ridden mirror of the real world controlled completely by the Morrigan herself, where the soul is challenged to a game where if they can survive 24 hours, they may be revived if they so choose. Sounds simple, but trust me when I say it's the most difficult challenge a mortal could ever take. Only a very, very few have proven to be strong enough souls to survive the hunt. But those that did have been extremely influential figures that have brought great growth to the world before and after their revival, regardless of their placement on the alignment chart. The Morrigan is all about inciting change in the world, so she would want those that bring the most change to have a chance at a second chance. She makes it a difficult chance to earn, but it's to make sure that those who win are truly worthy of it. And frankly, it's also for her own amusement. For her design, I wanted to really push the pro-witch queen vibe she had in most of her depictions that really drew me to her to begin with. Gave her face patterns that harkens to Braveheart because Celtic. The Celtic patterns on her dress were tricky at first, but really helped sell her cultural origins. And the fluff of crows that also act as her many, many eyes is such a great touch from me. She came out really cool, even though I forgot to give designer a scythe. Leave your weapon suggestions in the comments, I guess. And now we move to the final Reaper. Wealth, fame, power. Davy Jones, the first king of the pirates, obtained this and everything else the world had to offer. And his dying words as he was being executed were, "You want my treasure? Too bad! Fuck you all!" Upon death, instead of being whisked away by any of the Reapers, he was visited by Tiamat, goddess of the ocean. She had favored him as the first to sail all her waters and attain all his generation's greatest treasures from each of the 7 seas. She felt it was a waste to let him retire from being cool, so made him the 4th Reaper. As you expect, Davy Jones specializes in reaping souls that have died in the ocean and the coastline. These souls are brought on board the Flying Dutchman and forced to work as the crew until it makes its full journey across the world back to the entrance to the underworld, where the souls are dropped off. Except for the souls of those who have earned the title of Pirate King after him. The original doesn't want to sail alone ever again, so why not have a crew of those on his level? It is the price one pays for infamous freedom. While Davy Jones is a newer Reaper compared to the others appreciate that he was brought on because he takes over a huge portion of deaths in a huge portion of the planet. Takes quite a load off the others. For Davy Jones' design, I was trying really hard not to make him an amalgam of sea creatures like the Pirates of the Caribbean version, so I picked a single sea creature that fit the most with the role of a Reaper. The crustacean! Crabs have big meaty claws, so not only are they built-in weapons for his scythe, but the fact that they're used to vice-grip prey goes perfectly into Davy Jones' method of souls, grabbing them and keeping in place. You can say it's Davy Jones' locker, huh? Fits like a comical claw glove. At this point, you probably have noticed what the unifying details between them are. The colored gold to reference the coins one gives to enter the afterlife in many cultures, and a lack of legs to convey their whole deal with souls and ghosts and stuff. I think I accomplished making them all feel like the gods they represent, have distinct styles to themselves, and make them feel like a uniform group all at the same time. Good stuff. And there they are, the Reapers of SANDBOX. I had fun making these Reapers, and I hope you all enjoyed seeing them made. We are actually at the halfway point of this series, and we'll be going to meet the royal family of the underworld just in time for Halloween. So if you want to catch that and more stuff in the future, subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and have a good one!